Hello, friends. It's so good to see everyone and be with you here today. I am Noreen Farrell. I am the Executive Director at Equal Rights Advocates, which is all about moving progress for women and girls and gender expansive people across the country. And pay equity is a really important piece and key to the progress. And that's why Equal Rights Advocates helped found, and I chair a great campaign called Equal Pay Today with partners all across the country, closing the pay gap for women and others at the intersection of all of our identities. I am so excited to have here another incredible advocate and leader, Sylvia Torres Guillien, who is the Executive Director of the Disability Legal Rights Center, which is based in Los Angeles. She is also a member of ERA's Board of Directors. So happy to have you here. Welcome, Sylvia.
Thank you, Noreen. So great to be here with you.
We are here. We're so excited to have this conversation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the importance of intersectional justice work, but we're here to discuss Disabled Women's Equal Pay Day, which is today, September 18th. And we are really supporting an incredible coalition of groups led by groups that really center the needs of disabled folks across the country. And we've come together for the first ever organized Disabled Women's Equal Pay Day. I want to get it out right now. Later today, there's going to be an incredible national social media storm. It starts at 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 11 a.m. Pacific Time, and it's going to help us raise awareness about the pay gaps experienced by disabled women and really some very necessary policy reforms to address that. And Sylvia, just to contextualize our conversation, we'll tell the listeners that the pay gap for full-time workers who are disabled, they're making just 50 cents on average to the dollar as the average made by men. So that's if they're working part-time. Sorry, let me just correct that. It's 50 cents on the dollar for part-time workers and 67 cents on the dollar for full-time workers. And we're going to go into some of these details a little bit more in the end, but just understand that disabled women of color are doing much worse, with Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Latino women facing an even wider gap in their earnings. And there's a lot of contributors to that. But first, I'd love to just get Sylvia in this conversation. Can you share more about what the Disability Rights Legal Center does, what your mission is, who you serve, throw in your URL so people can follow you?
Yes, thank you. DRLC's mission is to champion the rights of people with disabilities. And we do that through education, through advocacy, and through litigation. So we serve people with disabilities. And the way we see community is we serve with an intersectional lens, and that includes gender, race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. We really do try to see our community from a holistic perspective. And DRLC uses the law to create change and also to promote justice for people with disabilities. And we do that through class action lawsuits to end systemic injustices. We also use the law to advocate and educate people with cancer who face housing and employment and economic hardship and discrimination. Just everything gets really piled on. And the world that we envision is one that ensures that people with disabilities have full access and are included in society without discrimination.
It's such incredible work. It's such an important mission. Please, if you don't know about the center, please do look them up. And I wanted to, obviously, given the range of people that you are helping, which is really extraordinary, Sylvia, and to you and your team, I mentioned the pay disparities that disabled women are experiencing, and I just was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the kind of economic insecurity more broadly. What is the evidence of economic insecurity that you're seeing in the communities that you serve,
Yeah,
and what are some of the factors for that?
yeah, thank you. What most folks don't realize that in the United States, there's something called the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA. And what it allows is employers throughout the country to pay workers with disabilities less than the federal minimum wage. So this is known as the sub-minimum wage, and it's permitted under Section 14C of the FLSA. And I'm happy to say that this practice has been outlawed in California. Well, at least in January 2025, that's going to permanently end in California, but it still remains in practice in 37 states. So we're talking about hundreds of employers nationwide and tens of thousands of people who are being paid sub-minimum wages. Um, and in California, we see the economic insecurity of our disabled community on many fronts. Housing, for example, is something that we've talked about. And it's among the most critical of issues where people with disabilities face discrimination in employment and pay, and where people with disabilities are living on $1,200 in Social Security disability insurance benefits. But for example, in one of the cases that we're litigating in Fullerton, the average rent is about $2,000. And
Yeah.
one of disability rights, our strength is disability rights, but really we represent people and partner with people with different identities and in issues.
Mhm.
The laws that we're criminalizing, or I'm sorry, strike. Laws criminalizing being unhoused, such as Grant's Pass case, it's a big Supreme Court case that we just heard about, was recently upheld by the Supreme Court, making an already challenging and much more difficult existence that much more frightening. That's why this advocacy is so important. We need to work together to promote economic security for this community and for marginalized communities generally. And we need to call out legislators when they are not leading with empathy and compassion.
Wow, I mean, you raised such a powerful point about how wage justice intersects with economic justice, with criminal justice. We know that poverty is the core of so many ills in our community. One of the reasons we focus on the pay gap is if you close the pay gap, you cut poverty in this country by a third. There are so many other contributors to the pay gap, but I think this idea of all of us in our justice movements working together is so important. And we did raise the issue about intersectionality, because what I've found is often when we talk about the gender pay gap, people are thinking about people like me. And I'm the last person that you should think about. I think that we have to think about people and how race discrimination intersects, how someone's abilities intersect, where they are, whether or not they're undocumented, whether or not they're immigrant, are they in a low paid workforce? Are they in a workforce where there isn't any kind of paid transparency? So really looking at the intersection of all of our identities and how it compounds the harm. And, have you seen that in your own work, even within the disability community?
Absolutely, Noreen, you're exactly right. I mean, wages for people with disability is like so much of what we see, a multifaceted issue. For us, this refers both to the nuanced layers of federal and state policy, and how that shows up, as well as how things in the workplace show up, and to the intersection of various barriers that people affected by wage discrimination experience. Um, at DRLC, we explicitly address disability rights because that's our strength, and our specialty. But the reality is it intersects with people who have so many other disabilities or just different identities. And we're talking about trying to find remedies uh, in the various areas that intersect with their lives. So I mentioned earlier, one is our current case in the city of Fullerton, where we're combating the expulsion of some of Orange County's most vulnerable residents, people who rely on their cars and their RVs for housing, for safety, and for transportation. With the cost of housing at $2,100 per month in California and $1,300 across the country, and that's a lower end of some of the statistics that we've been looking at. We're seeing that the consequences of a lack of living wages, particularly for people with disability, is just dramatic. And we find it absurd that a company, for example, can legally exploit an already vulnerable population by providing sub-minimum wages. And the data shows, we could be talking about $1 and some cents or $2. And this is now. And we're also asking people to bear the weight of discrimination and disability on top of the some minimum wages. So what we're doing is asking people who are doing so much for their families, doing so much for their communities, to handle and deal with so much more. So we've asked them to labor under it without objection or recourse. And we're functionally building our society on the backs of women who are already bearing an outsized burden. Um, and all of these issues are intrinsically linked, which means that the solution should be too. I mean, that's why I think it's so great as you're talking about, working collaboratively, that we're doing that here with ERA. And I'm so glad to be a part of DRLC and to serve on the board of ERA.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a powerful testament to why, what was really important for equal rights advocates when we were, advocating for different paydays affecting different communities is that we are centering the leadership of those from the disabled community. They can tell the stories, the intersections, the how economic insecurity manifests for them in the most powerful way. And they're also incredibly connected and leading the solutions. They know what is needed. And so in our data, and if you want to check out some information about this particular Equal Pay Day and those affecting other communities throughout the year, please go to www.equalpayday.org. You'll see some of that data that I mentioned. 67 cents on the dollar is what disabled people on average make compared to white men in this country. But if you add in part-time workers, that goes down to just 50 cents on the dollar. And I mentioned some of the lower pay rates for women of color. Black disabled women are paid on average 45 cents on the dollar earned by men. Disabled Latinos are paid, the data showing this year, 44 cents on the dollar. And so really to really achieve better policy goals, I'm going to tell you a couple of bills that we're calling for action on this year, but it is incredibly important. Those numbers come from data. And so, and the backdrop of all of this is our call for the most robust data that reflects the true lives and realities of disabled women and others in this country, particularly for those who are marginalized folks. So this, having this data this year, we really credit all of those who collect and analyze data, but it's critical to continue. We are asking folks this today, please join our social media storm at 11 o'clock today, Pacific, and 2 o'clock Eastern time. We'll provide all the links under this video about how you join us, how you can craft your own tweets or social media posts to join the conversation. We are calling for an end to segregated workplaces and the sub-minimum wage for disabled women. It is time for a competitive and integrated environment. We're asking Congress to pass what is called the Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act. That's a mouthful. If you follow us on equalrights.org and join our action team, we will provide you information for you to contact your legislators on this and the other laws I'm talking to you about, and you can learn more about them. We are also making sure that we have to end forced poverty. You mentioned this. We have to really end this draconian public benefit eligibility requirements that keep disabled women from working while getting support that they need to survive. They are not getting benefits if they work, and it really is just furthering and deepening poverty for so many in our community. So we're asking Congress to pass the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act. And we're also calling for expanded funding for disabled women who both give and receive care to work in our communities instead of being, trapped in institutions. So we're asking Congress to pass what's called the HCBS Access Act. So these are just several of the policy calls that we're making that could make immediate dent in that pay gap that we talked about, that are costing disabled women and others millions of dollars over the course of their career and lives that could be used to help them thrive and to get education and to house themselves and to feel safe and to pass along wealth to their family that comes after them. So This is our call to action. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining me in really bringing awareness to this important day today. Anything you want to add before we close out?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And then when we're talking about data, we have to remember that this is individuals, human beings that we're talking about. So the data is about the people, and the people are the ones that we need to make sure are getting the wages that they deserve and not the wages that, are being imposed upon them so unfairly. So great work in this effort. So happy that you're doing this in collaboration with so many wonderful disability partners.
Well, thank you and to your entire team and this entire community of advocates across the country that are doing so much for those who are disabled in our communities. It is making a difference, and we're so excited to be united on this day and on every day until the work is done. Are you with me?
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, everyone. Check out our links to how you can join today and stand with us on these policy pushes throughout the year.